Deputy Mayor, we're live. I hit a little too early. I apologize.
Okay.
We're live now. We can still wait a moment, but
I need to wait till it's 7. So.
yeah.
Kenmore City Council is now in session. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Danuski,
Excused?
Councilmember Curtis,
Present.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Shrevenick,
Present.
Mayor Baker,
Excused?
Deputy Mayor Herbig,
I guess we're going with present today.
and Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Yeah.
All right. If you all please stand with me for the flag salute. Next on the agenda is the agenda approval. Unless I hear any objections, we will consider the agenda approved. Do we have any objections to the agenda? All right, agenda is approved. Next, we have a presentation certificates to outgoing Planning Commission members Douglas Nugent and Scott McDonald. I just have a quick little thing to read about both of these guys. Doug Nugent's been on the Planning Commission and served as its chair for more than a decade. Significant accomplishments of the commission during his tenure included the Bastyr Master Plan, the city's first Shoreline Master Program, the 2015 Comprehensive Plan Update, changes to the regional business commercial zoning, and the Housing Strategy Plan. Thank you, Doug, for all of your years of service to the city of Kenmore. Scott McDonald served as the Planning Commission for the last 2 years. He too contributed to the Commission's work on the Housing Strategy Plan and recently to the Commission's recommendation on the neighborhood business zoning and the mobile home park project. Thank you, Scott, for volunteering your time to the Planning Commission. I'm not sure if most people realize the just amount of work that the Planning Commission does that allows the city to be successful. So much of our work related to zoning, related to just how the city's going to grow is almost too much for the city council to take on initially. And the Planning Commission just does an invaluable service to the city by doing a lot of the legwork and laying the foundation so that the city council can then act and manage the city. So it's usually very unrecognized, but I just want to thank both of you for all of your work. I've got certificates for both of you. How do we want to do this? Okay. So, Doug? Yeah, let's do individual. Just swap that out. All right.
Hey.
Next up, we have the introduction of new city police officers. James Harris and Vidarian Sapp and Marty Malone. Chief Horvath.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and City Council. If I could have my new officers join me. I'm making this a regular practice as we introduce new personnel into the city, just to show them to City Council, make them part of City Council, make them part of the city. And so here are my introductions. Deputy Vidarian Sapp, or Officer Sapp, Officer Marty Malone, and Officer James Harris. All three of them come from different parts of the county and also from other agencies. Vidarian came to us from Georgia as a lateral officer. Marty Malone came to us from Seattle PD as a lateral officer, and James Harris come to Ohio.
All right.
I'll go first.
Hello, thank you for having me, and I'm appreciative of being here in Kenmore. This is a great town from everything that I've seen to this point, and I imagine it's going to continue that way. 2000 in the city of Kenai for the Kenai Police Department, where I did 911 radio dispatching for 5 years. and then I transitioned into police work after that. I have been in the county since 2016 when my family and I moved down here. I have 4 kids, and I'm here in Kenmore after a short stint in unincorporated North Precinct and Metro. So appreciative to be here. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hello, my name is Marty Malone. So my background prior to law enforcement was military. So I was in the U.S. Army for 4.5 years, did 2 deployments to Afghanistan. I grew up in Washington in the Port Orchard area, decided I wanted to come back home, applied to the Seattle Police Department, worked there for 4 years in Capitol Hill. Enjoyed that, but I wanted to kind of make a change. Heard a lot of really good things about King County, and came over here about 5 months ago now. Was unincorporated for a little bit and decided that was way too different of policing than I was used to. Decided I want to get back to a city. Looked around at like Kenmore and Shoreline, and Kenmore really stood out to me, and decided to make it my home for now. So appreciate you guys having me here, and it's nice meeting you guys.
Glad to have you.
My name is Darian Sapp. How y'all doing? I moved up from Georgia. Did about 8 years working for the sheriff's office down there. Started looking at places to transfer, and King County popped up as a good place to work. I started my employment in the southeast of the county, down the near Maple Valley area. I did that for a few months, and then the drive was a little long for me, and I live in Shoreline, so I looked at places as far as Shoreline and Kenmore. Kenmore kind of stood out to me as a good area. Been doing this for a few months now. I enjoy it, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to all of you. We look forward to having you as part of our city family.
You're welcome, you guys.
And you're not quite done yet, Chief. All right. Next up, we've got a King County Lifesavers Award to Officer Derek Arnold.
Before I present this to you, give you a little background, give the council and the public a little background. On October 30th, Derek was on patrol overnight, during the overnight hours. And as is the practice with the sheriff's office and all sheriff's office employees, we all have issued to us AEDs, or automatic defibrillators for heart attacks. And anytime there's an unconscious male call that goes to the fire department, we are also co-dispatched, because there are many times where we may arrive at or before the fire department does. So besides our AEDs, we are also now equipped with naloxone, or Narcan, which is the anti-opioid antidote. And all of our officers have been trained to administer that, and it's a nasal spray. So this evening, or this night, Deputy Arnold was dispatched to an unconscious male, and as he was en route, he was updated to the fact that it might have been a drug overdose. Deputy Arnold carries his naloxone with him in his patrol car right next to his first aid or next to his AED. And so when he jumped out of his vehicle after arriving, and he happened to arrive before fire did, he grabbed both units, was directed towards the individual who was unconscious on the ground. He did an evaluation of the male, saw that he wasn't breathing, and didn't have any heartbeat signs of life in general, heartbeat. So he began CPR immediately, and the procedure before administering naloxone is to provide 1 full cycle of CPR, 2 breaths, and then apply the naloxone. Just as he was preparing to do the naloxone, the medics showed up. He indicated that he had naloxone sitting there on the ground next to him. The medics took that in hand and immediately administered that to the patient while Deputy Arnold was still administering CPR. With the naloxone on board, they moved the patient into the aid unit. And my understanding is they applied a second dose of naloxone in the aid unit and then transported the male to the hospital immediately. I was then advised by the fire chief here in Kenmore that the patient did survive, and because of Deputy Arnold's responsive efforts in helping to maintain this individual's life and carry it forward, he is being awarded with the King County Sheriff's Office Lifesaver Award. And Deputy Mayor, if you'd join me up here, or we can do it at the other corner.
Let's do
Right
it with the
there?
flags.
Okay, let's step up this way.
All right, next up, we have citizen comments. This is an opportunity to express your views on issues that are important to you and the community. Please limit your remarks down to 3 minutes. City Clerk, do we have anyone signed up?
There is nobody signed up.
Is there anybody wishing to be heard? Anybody wishing to be heard? Anybody wishing to be heard? All right. Citizen comments are closed. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. Do we have any objections to the consent agenda as it's written? All right, hearing no objections, consent agenda is adopted. Business agenda. Item A, relocation of King County grant funds for the St. Edward Ball Field project to Rhododendron Park Boathouse. Debbie Bent, Community Development Director, and Ann Stanton, Park Project Manager.
Good evening, Council. So we're here to get direction on the use or the reallocation of a grant that we received from King County, which we received for the St. Edward's Ballfield project. Unfortunately, due to the timing of that Ballfield project, we would not be able to use the grant funds. So what we would need to do then is ask King County if we could reallocate those funds to another project. When we came to you in May, your direction was to go to King County and ask them if that money could be reallocated to complete a park project on the north end of City Hall. And the response we got back from King County was that may not be a good fit for those grant funds, and instead we suggested the Rhododendron Boathouse, and that was thought to be a better fit for those grant funds. So we're coming tonight to ask for your specific direction to pursue with King County the reallocation of those grant funds to the Rhododendron Boathouse project. And also we would like specific direction, because then we also came to you and asked about direction for the Boathouse project. Your direction at that time was to pursue the smaller footprint for the Boathouse building, the 20 by 70 footprint on a 40 by 70 concrete foundation. So we'd also like to, again, get specific direction that if we pursue the reallocation of the grant funds, and that is your direction, that we'd also like to make sure we have your direction to pursue the full-size boathouse building, the 40 by 70 structure. So that's what we are here for tonight, and Anne is here to give you any specifics or answer any questions on that project.
Councilor Marshall.
This wasn't part of the money that was...
Is your mic on?
Oh, there we go. This wasn't part of the money that we were looking at for potentially the basketball hoops right here, was it?
Yes.
Could you maybe detail a little bit more about how or what the response was as to why they thought that it wouldn't be a good fit to use that money for the basketball hoops?
The main part of that funding criteria is to serve youth. And again, also the timing of the project as well would need to be complete to expend those grant funds. And so being as there's no current capital funding to complete the park projects in the north end of City Hall, we also felt that the boathouse was specifically to serve youth sports, that was a better fit. And that was the feedback received from Councilmember Dembowski in December in a meeting with the city manager.
And it looks like the city manager may have a comment on this.
Yeah, you as the city council directed us to make the argument for the money to be used for the City Hall Park. And so we did so. We brought that idea to Councilmember Dembowski. He did not feel like it was a good fit and that the boathouse would be a better fit. One of the reasons for that was the money still is competitive, and other King County council members could argue that the money could go somewhere else. So to keep it in Kenmore, Councilmember Dembowski needs a strong project that has regional significance, and a boathouse would serve the entire school district. And he also viewed it as kind of a small, very localized, the City Hall Park, he viewed it as a very small, localized, almost pocket park was the term he used. So because of that, he did not agree with us using the money for the City Hall Park and wants us to use it for the boathouse instead.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
At the risk of prolonging this process, we are meeting with him in 2 weeks, Rod. I guess, do we feel like there's any opportunity to advocate for this, or we think this is a closed door?
His mind was pretty firm on this.
I have one thought, and that is, there's an equity issue here, and there's a lot of kids, and I just wonder whether we've done our best to present the data.
We did not present data, but we did make that argument to him about the high concentration of kids and low-income kids and things.
Okay. Thanks.
Councilmember Curtis.
So I actually agree that the park that we're proposing here next door, which we eventually would like to complete, does feel more like a Kenmore project as opposed to the boathouse, which definitely has, I think, more regional appeal. And over the years, clearly, youth will be using it. Other people might, but the focus will be youth. So I'd be in favor of switching the funds to this to the boathouse.
He just, if I may, Councilmember Dembowski just really felt that he could not make the case for the City Hall Park to the King County Council, whereas he felt that he could very easily make the case on the boathouse to the full county council.
Any other questions?
The mayor and I did our best to make your case for the City Hall Park, but he was pretty firm on wanting to spend it on the boathouse.
Yeah, and I think we were pretty clear when we gave direction last time. It was kind of, if not one, then the other. It sounds like you did your best. So, Chair will entertain a motion to provide direction to staff to seek reallocation of King County Youth and Amateur Sports grant funding to the Rhododendron Park Boathouse project.
I so move.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Councilmember Curtis.
So should part of the same motion be that we will go for the larger project, or you'd like to keep that separate?
That's a second question we have for you tonight, actually, so thank you.
Shall we keep it separate for now?
Well, Debbie, do you want to?
It's up to you. You can either make it as one motion, or if you feel it'd be easier to divide it into two.
We already have the motion on the table, so let's go through this one, and then we can discuss the larger boathouse. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herbig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes?
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Curtis.
Yes.
Passed.
All right, so then we still have the question in front of us if we want to direct staff to go after, to build the larger boathouse. Do we have any questions specific to that? Councilmember Shrubnik.
I would be supportive. I am curious as we get toward that agreement with North Shore School District, what that's going to look like. I just want to make it clear that we're, providing 80 to 90% of the support through this grant and every other part of the support that we have provided, including the land.
That's all I got.
And, I just looking at how it's going to be used, I think the school district is probably going to have definitely the lion's share of the use. So it would be great to get a more clear idea of their participation financially.
I think what we've heard is their participation would be around $250,000, and it would be on tenant improvements. So tenant improvements could be things like a restroom, or it could be things like the mezzanine level. So we feel that you going with the larger footprint for the building, that there would be adequate things to be classified as tenant improvements for the school district money. We also had a meeting with the school district in December, and that is, we said that it's sort of our priority to get that agreement going as soon as possible to clarify that they will be providing those funds and what those funds can be used for. So that's the next step that we're currently working on with the school district.
Councilmember Curtis?
My question was answered.
Okay. Rob?
So there's the architect's estimate, and then there's the city manager's estimate. And in most of the projects I've worked for in my career, the projects come in higher than the architect or engineer's estimate. So if you use my estimate, the project is still about 100,000 short. If you use the engineer's estimate, we're going to be fine. So I think we should move forward knowing that depending on how bids come in, we may be 100 grand short on this project if you use what we call Rob's experience factor. That needs to be spotlighted in making this decision.
Councilmember Shrubnik?
Yeah, and my point about the agreement, it wasn't necessarily about the upfront, it was about the O&M, and I understand that that's not where we're at right now, but
Right.
I just want that recognized.
Councilmember Marshall?
So could you summarize again how funding then would work out for the larger project as opposed to the smaller? If there's any difference or not?
Let me answer that.
Who's paying for it? And
Well, there's a summary on, I think, the first page of your agenda, Bill, which Anne can step through.
So again, we had the proposed building budget. It shows the participation of the Washington State grant that we have acquired and the King County reallocation that we'd requested, and then a small participation by the city itself. And that gives us a base total that equals our building shell cost estimate with a little extra in there. The total cost estimate, including the interior of the building, the tenant improvements, that's under the column here that shows all potential funds. And again, the participation of the school district on the interior makes it possible to do the mezzanine. Maybe not everything that we have there, but right now it looks really encouraging.
So just to clarify for the people at home, the chart that she's referring to shows 242,500 coming from Washington State, 611,000 coming from King County, 7,500 from the city of Kenmore, and $250,000 from the North Shore School District, just so we're all on the same page here. Councilor Marshall?
And again, had the school district then committed to that money?
They've committed to the money, we just need to formalize that in an agreement. So right now, we are waiting for a draft of the agreement to come forward.
I just want to reiterate what Councilmember Shrubnik brought up with the M&O going forward on the project. I would hope that since we are essentially building the project, that maintenance and operations would, by and large, fall on the school district, and that we would have kind of some stronger understandings of what that is than we've had with some of our past partnerships.
I think that would be a second agreement that we would be working on, so it's not
Yeah.
that we recognize that there is a need for another agreement to outline those terms for O&M.
Yeah. All right.
But just to be clear on what the school district is expecting, they're not expecting to pay any rent. They expect their rent to be zero. Their contribution would be the $250,000 for the tenant improvements, and then, of course, programming would be there. You know, they would provide the rowing programs for the youth.
But I think it'd be a safe assumption that we would assume that they would be taking on almost entirely the maintenance, at least the maintenance side of things. Is that a correct assumption, or?
You know, we haven't crossed that bridge with them. We haven't had that discussion.
Because for zero rent, I think keeping the building standing and operating is a minimal ask.
Yeah, we'll need to bring that up with them, yeah.
Okay. Councilor Smith?
I mean, so I'm fine with this, but I also assumed we weren't maintaining it. And I think that's a significant aspect that isn't addressed. Honestly, very significant. And it's also significant when you consider that you know, the 611,000 is a grant that was earmarked for City of Kenmore capital in our parks CIP, and it's going towards a project that isn't in our CIP. So the net impact of that is we're losing 611,000 as a city for park improvements. Now, I realize I say that, that's the technical side of it. The reality is we'll have a great boathouse in our community, which has value. But I do think it's really important that we get, I actually think we need to have this figured out before we, I mean, I thought this was figured out. I did not realize it wasn't on the maintenance and operations. That's going to be significant. I mean, you figure every component of a $500,000, $750,000 project depreciates. It's going to have an amortization schedule just like every other capital item. There has to be a plan to maintain it and to replace it. Or at least we have to have an idea of what it is.
Councilmember Marshall?
I just agree with Councilmember Smith, and I think I have too many questions to move forward with approving what the scope of the project is without those questions fleshed out or an agreement entered in with the district.
I mean, I would propose, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, I think I'm comfortable moving forward with where we are now, but before we would actually sign the funding agreement with the school district, I think we need to have agreement on the M&O and have those brought to us simultaneously at the council. Is that something that staff thinks is doable?
If that's your direction, we can start those discussions with the school district on O&M responsibilities for whether it's programming or operation and maintenance of the building.
Because what I'm hearing is just some unease around the ongoing maintenance, and I don't think we want to build it and then have them say we're not going to upkeep, because then that puts us in a lurch. But if we have both agreements coming to us, you know, in a couple months or whenever it is that those come together, we can still go forward with planning for the larger facility, which is mainly where we are right now, is in the design phase, right?
That's what the design figures are showing, the larger footprint, correct?
Okay. So we could go forward with where we are now, and then before we actually get into pouring concrete, hopefully have an agreement on both that comes to council that we can go over. Does that kind of meet the needs of the body, or no? Yes? Councilmember Curtis?
I agree with that part, and then I would like to make a motion that we go ahead and use the reallocated funds to build the full 40 by 70 foot building.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second. Discussion? Councilmember Shrubnik.
I guess I would like to see, you know, some bullet points of what we think the agreement is going to have, because it's O&M, it's facility sharing, it's equipment sharing. I mean, it's hours of operation. You know, this is a thing. And assuming that, you know, the school district is going to have about 80% of the use, I think we just need to be clear about what the community use is. We're throwing a lot of money at it, and we want to make sure that we have solid community access and ability to use it, and ability to use not only the facility, but, you know, extend our equipment sharing. We have an equipment sharing agreement with them, so keep those relationships going.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I think you got a whole lot. You know, another way to rephrase this, the context of what we're discussing is, if the school district share is $255,000, and just bear with me for a second, if we were to pay the school district share of $255,000, we would own this completely. And if we owned it completely, we would then charge the school district rent. And so that's another way to approach it that isn't the way it's structured, but it may be a way we want to think about it if that gets us to the end result of having a M&O plan in place. I realize that's a lot of money. I don't want to dismiss the 200 because I didn't want to spend that much on it anyway, let alone the grant. But if it means there's an income stream that's significant. I mean, the school district wouldn't expect to use any other facility of the municipality without paying rent. I don't understand why this is any different.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
I concur. I actually raised this exact point a few weeks ago with staff, so I totally agree. I actually think we'd have more, I think it'd be cleaner, actually, if we went with that kind of an approach.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yeah, even though it's a design question versus funding, I don't feel like I have enough questions answered on the funding to decide, okay, we want to go with a more aggressive or larger or more deluxe design on it right now.
Councilmember Curtis.
So I guess my thought is there are a lot of projects we decide if we want them, and then we fund them, and we plan them, and we build them, and kind of as we go along, then we get around to all the other details. So we don't have all the details of every building figured out before we even start creating the idea and funding it. So my thought is this moves it forward. Otherwise, we wouldn't have voted even to build the full pad and a half a building if we weren't planning on moving forward. So I'm inclined to say I thought we were in agreement that we wanted a boathouse, and let's get the boathouse built. And I understand there's a lot of issues that need to be solved, but I think there's time to do that.
I just have a quick question for staff. So if we weren't to approve the larger project tonight, how does that affect our timelines going forward?
We have a very short timeline, especially if we want to try and get this project constructed this year. There are a lot of moving pieces, but the sooner we get the direction, the sooner we can keep going, keep the design going, get this in for permitting, and we stand a better chance of trying to get it built this year.
Also, I'd like to add that we have funding assuming the King County grant is reallocated, we are funded with city funds to build the shell, the whole building and the shell. Our shortfall is to do the interior improvements, the tenant improvements. So it would stretch out our construction timeline if the city just focused on building the shell with what we've got funding for, separate from what the school district participation would be. And then that leaves us time to negotiate in exchange for the city allowing the district to do the tenant improvements. Then that would all be a matter of interlocal agreements being agreed and signed prior to that. It would mean there's no way we could build it this year. We could build a shell, but it wouldn't be operational till probably next year, which still fits into the timeline with Log Boom being available for the current programs for one more year.
Yeah, I don't want you to feel rushed or backed into a corner or anything. This could become operational in 2020, and we would be fine. So if you want to give it some more time, we certainly can.
Absolutely.
Do we have any other discussion? Councilor Smith?
This I guess for our city manager and for staff. What kind of time frame do you think is needed to have a reasonable outline on a maintenance and operations agreement for the boathouse?
Probably take a couple months. And then if you wanted to wait until you had that, then that definitely puts the completion date into 2020, which is not the end of the world.
Councilmember Curtis?
So am I hearing correctly that we could, with the present funds, build the full shell? And then if we have a hard time working something out with the school district, we could just delay the tenant improvements. It wouldn't be as functional a building, but at least the shell would be built.
Right.
Okay. And that may be delayed for a whole nother year if we can't come to some kind of good agreement.
But that would not be as efficient or cost-effective because you'd be mobilizing two contractors separately, which has more costs.
Because right now you guys are authorized to build the smaller footprint, correct?
Yeah.
And that's what you'll be moving forward with if we don't approve the larger footprint tonight or at some later
We
date.
can only move forward with one design. It's not effective to move forward on parallel tracks with two designs. So I would recommend that we would move forward with the larger footprint and then pull back if we need to, because if we keep going with the smaller footprint and then you suddenly decide to change it, we've lost a lot of time, invested a lot of money on something which doesn't make sense. So I'd either suggest we either stop completely or we get direction on the larger footprint, and if something falls apart, then we stop at that point.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Do we have any more discussion on this? Okay, clerk, could you just read back the motion? It's been a few minutes.
The motion was for the full 40 by 70, correct? Councilmember Curtis, footprint.
Use the reallocated funds for the full
Okay.
40 by 70 building.
Use allocated funds for the full 40 by 70.
All right, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Curtis,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
No.
Councilmember Shrevenick,
Yes?
Deputy Mayor Herbig,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Passed 4-1.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda, item B, amendment to City of Kenmore 2019-20.
I have one
Councilmember
question.
Smith, yes.
So where was it left on when we'll be updated then on the, just so I have an expectation of understanding?
Yeah, no,
What
that's
is the
actually a good
plan
point.
going forward? Or do you need a
they'll-
motion to
they'll,
direct you?
They'll continue, they'll start designing the full-size building, and we'll also start conversations with the school district on the details you wanted.
Okay, thank you.
So you feel like you have direction that we kind of want both of those at the same time?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for reminding me of that. All right. Amendment to City of Kenmore 2019-2021 State Legislative Agenda to include the Lake Washington Loop Trail improvements on Juanita Drive Northeast. Who is presenting on that?
Me.
Mr. City Manager.
So you approved your state legislative agenda last fall, and we're moving forward with that, and our governmental affairs firm is helping us make our case in Olympia. Today was the first day of session for the state legislature. After that, we learned that we did not get the TIB grant that we expected to get for Juanita Drive. And in particular, Juanita Drive project I'm talking about is one of the walkways and waterways projects that was approved in the voter-approved bond measure. That project is the total cost estimate for the Juanita Drive section from the Kirkland city limit all the way to the bridge is about $16 million. And we've acquired about 2/3 of that, about $10 million of that. The hope was that we were going to get the other $6 million from TIB, Transportation Improvement Board. Our project scores well, just as we were told, and it certainly did score well in the TIB grant funding. But given that we were just awarded the largest TIB grant in the state for the Sammamish River Bridge, they don't feel it's appropriate to give us grant funding for Juanita Drive at this time. So that doesn't that doesn't necessarily set us back or cause us to give up or anything. We just start scrambling and looking for additional sources of revenue. And we're recommending that we ask Senator Frocht to recommend that we have $2 million from the state capital budget to go towards Juanita Drive. And in this particular case, it would be a good fit because Juanita Drive is part of the Lake Washington Loop Trail and connects in with the Burke-Gilman Trail. And because of that, we think it might be a good fit in the capital budget. That would reduce the gap down to $4 million, which might make a better case for us with the TIB funding next year. So my recommendation is that you add a $2 million capital budget request for Juanita Drive, which is a key section of the Lake Washington Loop Trail.
Do you have any questions? Any discussion? All right. Chair will entertain a motion to approve proposed amendment to the City of Kenmore 2019-2021 State Legislative Agenda to include the Lake Washington Loop Trail improvements on Juanita Drive Northeast. Do we have any discussion? Oh.
So moved
Yeah,
for the
sorry.
motion.
Got ahead of myself.
I'll second. Oh, okay.
Got a motion, we got a second. All right, any discussion? All right, seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Excuse me. Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes?
Deputy Mayor Herbig,
Yes.
Councilmember Curtis,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Passed.
All right, next up, we've got staff report.
The only thing I have is next Monday is Martin Luther King Day, and we're not going to have a council meeting on that Monday, of course. Your code allows you to have a council meeting on the following day. I'm proposing that we not have a city council meeting on Tuesday, January 22nd. And if that's okay with you, we'll just go ahead and cancel that meeting. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Councilmember reports, comments, and initiatives. Councilmember Smith.
Nothing to add, thank you.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes, thanks to the city manager and staff for making the equity argument regarding the basketball hoops. Definitely appreciate that, and I hope we keep our eye on the prize for those hoops next to City Hall for a broader range of our kids, so I appreciate that.
Councilmember Curtis.
Nothing to add?
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Just want to say thanks again to staff for a really great retreat, well-run, well-organized. We made a lot of progress. Thank you.
I'm going to echo what Councilmember Shrubnik just said. We had a really productive 2 days, and I think we got a lot done, and I feel good about how we resolved everything. So, all right, next on the agenda, we are recessing to executive session to discussion of litigation or potential litigation per RCW 4230-110, subsection 1I. There will be no action following this. And how long do we expect this to last? 15 minutes. All right, we're going to executive session for 15 minutes.